I was given early access to Season 4.5, and of course, the very first thing I'm going to do was to play Daredevil. And let me tell you, he's possibly the most fun hero that we've had added to the game, but he has a critical flaw. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about Daredevil, start from the sort of high-level meta discussion, and then boil it down to the exact damage, combos, ranges, etc. that he has. Hopefully to give you a guide as to how to play him, or at least understand him, or at least have a discussion about him so that you can hit the ground running starting in Season 4.5 in just 1 week. Of course, be sure to subscribe before we get going here. It does help us out, yada, yada, yada. You guys know how the deal works. All right, so Daredevil is so much fun. He's a 3-star difficulty melee-based hero, and I would put him in the archetype category of being 80% a brawl character and 20% a dive character or a flanker character. There's a debate whether he should be 50-50, but he's definitely somewhere around there. He's going to be spending the vast majority of his time dealing with the front lines, dealing big damage, and surviving. You might notice right away that he has an increased health pool of 325. This seems to be a growing trend in Rivals that heroes are having, especially the DPS heroes, have more health. So what is his flaw? Well, here's the thing. I love Daredevil and I'm having a lot of fun playing him, but as I'm engaging with him and as I'm whooping butt, I can't help but think he seems strikingly similar in terms of the goals that he's trying to accomplish to, well, a lot of the other pseudo brawl dive flank characters that we already have. Think Magic or Iron Fist or any of the sorts. He sits in a very unusual and, dare I say, perilous position where he's going to be either really, really good and absolutely outshine those other two, or not, and he's not going to get picked. Now, obviously, players are going to play him because he is extremely fun, and he's the new hero to play. He's a DPS hero, which of course tends to be more popular, but I keep thinking in the back of my mind, as I'm playing these games, what is the point? Why am I engaging with this character? And that's not to say, that's not to throw shade at the developers or at the game. I absolutely love Rivals and I absolutely love Daredevil's design, but let's be honest, players, especially in the higher competitive scene, will kind of optimize the fun out of a hero, right? Like when you're really focusing down and absolutely trying to win games no matter what, for absolutely no other reason other than to climb rank, you start to make decisions that maybe are not fun forward. You start thinking to yourself, well, even though I like X hero, this hero might not get the job done, so I'm just going to stick with Y hero because I want to win. And that's the thought I have in my mind, because Daredevil right now is stuck in an awkward position, a rock and a hard spot between being better than the other heroes, and thus simply he's going to be picked more than them outside of just sheer comfort factor, or he's gonna be worse and he's not going to be picked. Let's talk about this in terms of his kit so we can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. So Daredevil's unique thing, obviously right away, is that he is blind, and they've done a really good job of emulating some of his powers and abilities that he actually has in the comic books and so on and so forth, in that he has sonar-based vision. I can actually see it ping off the top of his head as he's kind of pulsing out to see where targets are. It allows him to see targets through walls, which is arguably his niche. This even allows him to see invisible targets. However, how many times in Marvel Rivals are you thinking to yourself, man, I really could use a wall hack on a melee-based hero? Again, that's not a bad thing. Obviously, you're going to be able to share information with your team, but I don't think that there's a lot of instances in the game, maybe I'm wrong, you guys can correct me in the comments, where I'm thinking to myself, I really need to know where the enemies are. In fact, the vast majority of the time, I kind of already know where they are. But this does bring up an interesting point. Daredevil is a sort of pseudo dive and a pseudo brawler. Brawlers obviously are good against the more flanker diver characters, and because he can see targets through walls, he is meant to be played, it seems, as a defensive character. His niche seems to be that he can see targets coming before they're an issue. In other words, when you've got a Spider-Man who's maybe lurking outside of your field of view, or a Black Panther who's ready to snap the neck of your cloak and dagger in the background, the Daredevil operates more as a conduit of information rather than a hero who's meant to get the job done by dealing damage. And that's not to say that he can't get the job done by dealing damage. He absolutely whoops butt. His combos are insanely good, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. So it seems his niche is just simply to detect incoming dive divers, which arguably could be a good niche, but that seems to be something that just a skilled player will be able to do simply through practice, something that you'll be able to get a developed skill for through practice. And because he doesn't have a direct way of dealing with these enemies, dealing with these threats, outside of them just simply sitting and waiting for him to come to them, I'm just worried. I'm just worried. I'm just trying to look at it in both the optimistic and the pessimistic way, because this is a niche that he has carved out for himself, but is it a good enough niche for him to get picked over other heroes? Maybe too much, maybe too little. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from. So let's actually start breaking down his kit, and then we'll talk about some of his combos. Like I said, 3-star difficulty, seems to be sort of a mix between Brawl and Dive, 325 base HP. His passive lets him quote unquote see targets, hack targets through walls, through about 50 meters seems to be what I'm able to find in practice range. He can see targets normally within 25 meters, and anything outside of that, he literally has absolutely no idea. He does have a wall run, and this does allow him to sort of wall hang if he hits a ceiling. And this doesn't seem to have any cooldown, nor does he have any aerial jump in order to follow up with this. His primary has about a 4.5 meter range, and it seems to be dealing about 30 damage. It's a little rough to tell when it's just me and then a practice range, as I'm just sort of having to eyeball it, but that seems to be the right number. He also has a melee weave, and that's going to be a critical part to the skill cap of his character, is that you can use his normal attack and then weave in basic melees in between. The melees do have a slightly lower range, but they attack slightly faster, and they can be shot in between the intervals of his normal attacks to slightly increase the DPS. His Fury is unusual. So we've had characters in the past like Scarlet Witch, Human Torch, etc., that use a sort of alternate meter in order to use some of their abilities. But what makes him so interesting, what makes Daredevil interesting, is that this Fury does not passively regenerate. It also does not come back when he dies. If you spend all of your Fury out on the battlefield and then go down, you're going to start with 0, which is a very unusual thing because it's an absolute key component to his kit. Where you're going to spend his Fury is on his whip. You'll see an option here as he comes up, sort of like how magic operates. He's given 2 options. He can either use it in whip form or he can use it in projectile form. Both forms will give him 25 base overshield when he uses it, just flat out for using it. Doesn't matter which version of it that you use. If you decide to use the whip version of it, it has about a 7, 8, 9, somewhere around there meter range. It deals about 80 damage, and if you can land it on top of the base 25 HP, it gives him 84 bonus health overall. The throw seems to be about 40 meters, meaning that you can hit targets that are outside of your range, and these seem with both shots, there's 2 of them, to deal 35 damage apiece or 70 damage total. This bounce is semi-intelligent, meaning that if it hits a target that is near another target, it will somewhat try to bounce between them, sort of like how Moon Knight's Onks might work, and also it will try to bounce towards targets if you hit the ground or a wall or whatever it may be. The throw will slow down targets, and it seems to be about a 25-30% slowdown, which is pretty good, pretty good. The primary way that he's going to be dealing with flyers, because that slow tends to ground them, so there you go. All of his abilities, minus a couple, will combo into Righteous Cross. This is a contextual secondary ability that deals 60 damage, and it has about 5 meters of lunge range and damage and such. Each hit, both primary as well as the Righteous Cross, will restore half of a Fury charge, him being able to hold a total of 3, so it'll take 6 hits to go from 0 all the way up to full. His primary movement tool is the Devil's Lash. This is his grapple. This deals 30 damage if you hit the target directly, and will pull both you and the target together, primarily focusing on bringing the Daredevil to the target rather than the target to Daredevil. Seems to be about 75 to 25%, roughly speaking. This also can hit walls, which is primarily what you're going to use to get out of bad situations or maybe get back into the fight a little bit faster. This will also set up the Righteous Cross. This seems to have about a 25 meter range as well, so everything seems to be roughly within his field of view, which sort of makes sense. His ult will also operate like that, but we'll talk about that in just a second. One of the primary and most interesting parts of his kit is Pursuit. Now, obviously you can see targets through walls, and you probably have seen me marking targets with Pursuit. This is an unusual debuff/buff. Well, debuff to enemies, buff to you. This reduces enemies' outgoing damage by 20%. So it's different than how, say, the Thing's damage reduction works, where any incoming damage is reduced by a flat amount. This reduces that enemy's outgoing damage, as far as I can tell, just to Daredevil by 20%. And this has a huge range. This does not, I repeat, does not have a cooldown. So long as you don't use the secondary contextual dash on the target, you can get bonus speed just for pinging a target and leaving it on them. So absolutely, this is going to be one of the ways that you're able to weave in and out of danger, in and out of getting kills around the enemy team, and just generally allowing yourself to reset and so on and so forth, and make that target in particular have a harder time killing you. Now, it might be tempting to think that you want to put this pursuit ping on a backline hero, say like a support or so on and so forth, which is fine if you want to use that for the dash, which we'll talk about as a core part of some of his damage combos, but I actually think it might be better to put it on the biggest threat. So on the second round I ended up playing with him, the enemy team decided to throw out an Emma, and Emma absolutely cooks him. Very similar to how she cooks a lot of the other brawlers, it was a really hard time to deal with it. Now looking back, I actually think it would have been smart for me to put the ping on her. That way I would have a slightly higher chance of surviving if I ended up getting grabbed by her. The dash itself seems to have about a 10-meter range, maybe 15-meter range, and only when you use that dash will it then trigger his 15-second cooldown. So basically you can keep a speed boost active on him at all times, as well as keep an enemy's damage reduced, specifically outgoing towards the Daredevil at all times, so long as you don't follow up with the dash, which is, like I said, pretty darn good. Last for his abilities are his reflect. This reflects the incoming damage exactly where you're aiming, just like how you would with Captain America's shield, except, you know, more accurate, for half the incoming damage. So if 100 damage comes in, it will deal out, well, 50 damage. This makes him totally invincible while it's active too, and it does not seem to care whether you are facing the target or whether you're away, so you can use this sort of like Iron Fist's block. I think you guys are starting to get kind of what I was getting at the start of this video. There's a lot of things that obviously share some design space, and outside of his ability to see invisible targets and see threats that the rest of the team might not know about, his kit is strikingly similar. That has me just a little bit worried, because he's either too good and he gets used above these heroes, or he's not and he doesn't get used. It's just a really hard line to find. But at least he brings something to the table with his ability to see invisible or undetectable threats. But of course, there's still his ult. His ult is certainly unique. They definitely got a niche right for him. It has about 15 meters of what they consider his line of sight. And if targets are looking at Daredevil, notice the targets have to be looking at Daredevil in order for this to deal damage to them. This will deal a total of about 600 damage, which is quite a lot. On top of this, this will also cause a blinding effect, which unfortunately I don't have the ability to test quite yet. We'll definitely be doing more of that as time goes on and I start getting my editor beast online here as we're able to test some more of this. So subscribe and look forward to more videos about that. This lasts for about 8 seconds, and of course he can move around and do whatever he wants. Targets that are within this range allow him to regenerate his fury. So that's the basics of his kit. He's built around brawling heroes that are on the front line. He's very much similar, like I said, to Magic or Iron Fist. He has the ability to reflect projectiles and survive what would have been lethal damage. He has the ability to see invisible targets, and he can combo damage in quite well. Let's actually talk about some of those combos. I think his bread and butter combo is going to be obviously ping a target for pursuit, whoever you're trying to kill. And then from there, grapple them, hit them with a basic quick melee, follow up with your cross, swap to your whip, deal the damage there, which will give you the bonus health, follow it again with another quick melee before finishing off with yet another cross. Any 250 HP targets that are hit by this full combo are guaranteed to die with some change. If any targets happen to survive this, which is likely going to be the vast majority of your incoming damage, you're then going to have to follow up with more melees and basic swings as you continue to go on. Your goal is to just simply try to get as many of the whips in as possible, as not only does this re-enable his ability to deal cross, which does not have a cooldown so long as you have fury. So as long as you're landing primary attacks, you will continue to get fury up. Crosses also get this up. This is the main portion of where his lethality as well as his survivability comes from. So Daredevil overall, I'm a little tiny bit worried about how he's going to fit into the meta, but absolutely he is so much fun. I guarantee you that if you are any sort of player, especially a DPS player, you're absolutely going to love his kit. I'm really hoping players lean into his unique tools that allow him to see what otherwise would be invisible threats, because that's absolutely what the devs are going for. but we'll see. I'm just really hoping other heroes don't step on his toes or vice versa. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Obviously, we're super early access, so take all this with a grain of salt. Remember to subscribe, bless your faces, and deuces.